Welcome to Startup Success, the podcast for startup founders and investors. Here you'll find stories of success from others in the trenches as they work to scale some of the fastest growing startups in the world. Stories that will help you in your own journey. Startup Success starts now.
Welcome to Startup Success. Today we have Andrew Kitirattragarn with us today, who is VP of Sherwood Partners. And we're going to get into Sherwood Partners and the help they provide startups around wind downs later in this episode. But first, I want to welcome Andrew. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Kate. Thanks for having me. It's an honor.
And get into Andrew's founding experience. He was co-founder, CFO, COO of Dang Foods. And, tell us about that experience, Andrew. This is a podcast for founders, and we all love hearing, the different startup experiences that our guests have had.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I did this for 10 years with my brother. We started in 2012. My brother's officially the founder, and it was important for me to have him keep that title.
Okay.
But I came on really early. But it was important for me to have him keep the founder title because I wanted him to be the marketing. Like I wanted people to go to him.
I see.
And there's a book called Traction.
Yes.
Out there, right? There's EOS Traction, right? And they talk about the integrator and they talk about the vision. And one thing that's very clear is that the integrator shouldn't get any of the credit, and the visionary should get all of the credit. And I actually think that's something really important for the integrator to know. It's actually really good to have one face of the company, not multiple faces.
Oh,
so I was very clear early on to not get the credit. And but I also just knew internally that I was very important to the company. So I was fine with that.
Excellent clarification. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Anyways, I had a little time, so I gave a little background. But so my longer title is CFO, COO of Dang Foods, and sometimes I say co-founder strategically, maybe I should on this podcast. And then I was also the chief restructuring officer. I pretty much wound it down, like the executive that wound it down, and then we sold off the assets. But it wasn't. It was happy. It wasn't a big time sale where we made a lot of money. But I managed that process. So that's what I did for Dang from 2013 through 2023. And I did that alongside my brother. I was the integrator. My brother was the visionary. My brother officially started the company in 2012.
Okay.
And then I joined on in 2013. I was actually working for my father at the time. And then we all had a conversation. My father talked to Vinny and effectively said, "Hey, I think you should take Andrew." So they effectively traded for me. They were like, "Hey, your business is scaling much faster than mine. I think you need Andrew." And I was just like, "Yeah, sure." I didn't even know anything about food CPG, except I had an accounting background. And it was just cool. I was happy to start something with my brother and be in the early stages. And I didn't know what I wanted to do, but it was he was growing really fast, and that's fun when things are growing.
Yes.
So that's how I started.
Okay. And so tell us about growing really fast and what that was like, because that's an important distinction.
Yeah, and to be clear too, I don't know if I said this, it was Dang Foods Company, so we're Asian American snack brand. So over time, over the 10 years, we sold coconut chips. We sold these things called Thai rice chips, both alternative functional snacks that are somewhat alternative to potato chips. But coconut chips are a little bit sweeter. You get a lot of good fats from them. And then we also came out last year of Dang Bar, which is this nutrition bar, which is a low carb, keto friendly bar, which we came out in 2019. So that's a little bit of background.
I love how you phrased it, that your father traded you over because your brother, had started this snack food company that was growing quickly. What was that like to be part of growing quickly, scaling? Tell us a little bit about that experience.
It was cool. I appreciate you asking that. My brother went in early on, and it was, first of all, to get to the kind of growth, we just got we had the right plan. My brother was kind of in the right place at the right time. And the coconut chips were our first big hero product. And that was really, there was no product like it out in the market in the United
Mm,
States. And so he called me up and I helped get him some samples. We have family over there, which gives us a competitive advantage. So we got some samples of the coconut chips, brought it over. And eventually he got some traction and he had been doing this on his own, but I was helping out just a little bit here and there before we started. Long story
okay.
short, we were at a small grocery store and some Safeway executives saw us. And the Safeway executives tried the coconut chips. They were like, this is amazing. And they're like, we want to bring you into all of our stores. And so all of a sudden, like we just went from nothing to like a $4 million brand, like because of that one decision, which is just crazy.
That
And it's
is.
funny. And if you think about like all these other, especially like all these other CPGs, when I talk to them, they're like, "Oh, we had to grind this out. We had to go
Right.
door by door, do all this." Like that didn't
Yes.
happen to us. We just got really freaking lucky. Like,
That's
like, well, I mean, I say when I say sometimes I get asked the question of like, "Hey, like, how much is this like luck or hard work?" I think the
right.
early days it was a lot of luck.
But
Um,
being prepared, right, when those luck opportunities came up, right? That's the
yes,
distinction.
Yes, yes, and it's funny going back on it. I'm like, oh, we could have been more prepared, and I think maybe I'm an optimizer. I like to think like that.
hmm
Uh, but um, but yes, I mean, I do think there was a lot of luck there. But when it happened, it was just like, oh my God, and like this is fun. Like these are issues. We're dealing with problems, and then when you're growing, I think most people think when you're growing, the problems are more fun.
Right.
Um, more fun, more high pressure, but they're fun to deal with.
Mm.
And anyway, so I didn't have any background in CPG. I had an accounting background from KPMG, and my brother didn't have any background too. He was actually a food research analyst at
Oh,
a good guy, and he worked for the government earlier than that. And he was very like he's kind of the visionary. He's always in the years before he went to Burning Man, he was really trying to find himself. This was like a big part of this company was like an exploration of him as well.
interesting.
And then I literally did everything else. Like I did ops, I did finance, I did accounting. I did a lot of the back end work.
Okay. Okay. So I love how you described that because it resonates with a lot of the early stage startups I talk to, right?
Yeah.
Visionary, finding yourself. So you're having, you have these lucky opportunities, you're having this explosive growth. When did things start to change? What
Yeah.
was the catalyst? Because it sounds like, right, you're the products you described right on market, right? You have these opportunities.
Great question. So around 20, this is 2013, I joined on. Around 2018, we got venture funded 2016. We got venture
Okay.
funded 2018. Around 2018 is when things started to flatten. And I think a big reason for that, in hindsight's 2020, it's easy to say this, we could have done different things, but the big reason for that is I think that the category was starting to be tapped out in terms of like alternative functional snacks that are at a higher price point, like
Mm-hmm.
coconut chips and rice chips, like sliced mangoes, like kale chips, like chickpea chips, like all those alternative better for you chips. They're maybe like a 3 ounce bag of them was like $5. That market size is only so big. Like you're gonna have 350, 60 Whole Foods, right? And then it's going to be a
Mm-hmm.
pretty big presence there. But the velocities and how fast they sell on shelf are just, you're going to get capped on that because it's not a big category like potato chips. It's not a big category like I don't know, pasta or
Right.
pasta sauces or something very, very staple,
Of
right?
course.
And so we felt like we were getting kind of tapped out, and then the growth wasn't. That was part of the reason that our growth started stalling because we had already gotten to a lot of these distribution in a lot of these places. There was not that much more to do.
Mm.
So 2018, and I could tell you about a little bit like 2020 through 2023, but high level, like we wound down the company in 2022. I'll kind of fast forward there. Between 2018 to 2021, I personally, like, I was pretty miserable. Like I was
Really?
going through psychological things during that time. It's hard when you are a venture-backed company in CPG and you're not profitable
Mm-hmm.
and you're not growing, it's extremely hard.
Mm-hmm.
You have all these pressures from the investors. Like you're not the hottest new thing on the block. Like you have to manage employees' expectations and then convince them to stay, even though they might have better opportunities elsewhere. Like it was a really hard place. And I remember talking to my brother, and like it was in like 2020, 2021, we were trying to fundraise a little bit more to like stay alive. And I remember telling Vincent, I was like, I don't want to go out and fundraise because I don't know if I believe in this anymore. Like, I don't know if I like the fundamentals. Like, if I wouldn't put my own money into this, like, why would somebody else put their money into this? So how could I convince somebody else to put their money into this? And there was, so I don't know if I don't think checked out is the right word. I don't like, I don't, there's like a negative connotation with being checked out. But it was really difficult. And I didn't know it until 2022 when I had to do some reflections, but I wanted out, and I had wanted out for a while. It was 4 really tough years of not growing.
Wow. I appreciate you being candid about it, because I think what you said that really hit me was that you didn't know if you would invest in it, right? And it's not being checked out, but it's just being true to what you were seeing, right? And feeling.
I didn't know if I would. Granted, like there's some investors on this call, like there was some technicalities of like it gets difficult technically. Like, and I don't want to go into too much detail of this, but
Right.
interests aren't aligned if there's preferred shares that are raised on the downside. And
Yeah.
that's a technical thing that makes things
Right.
more difficult.
Yes.
It's not that it can't be worked through, it's just more difficult to work it through. Anyways, that's a technical thing. But aside from that, I still felt like I don't know if I believe it. And maybe it's also like I don't know if I want to be here that much longer. And I'm not going to invest in this money to find someone else to do that. I just don't believe that that can happen. What's interesting is I'll go into this more in terms of the wind down, but it's kind of I'm feeling like I should say this now. It's that in our society, I think it's so hard right now for a lot of founders that are struggling because they have nobody to talk to.
Right.
I mean, founders have other co-founders, right?
Right.
Founders have other support groups like Entrepreneurs Group or like YPO that they
Right.
could talk
Right.
to other people, right?
Yeah.
And these are the sort of situations where founders really need other people to talk to. And the public doesn't allow it because our society is all about not giving up. And
Very
like,
true.
what I want to do is I want to change that perception because I don't feel like I gave up.
No. Yeah. I appreciate you bringing that up, because when you talk, I don't feel like you gave up. You came to a conclusion. So let's go there. I mean,
Yeah.
let's talk about the wind down, because that's got to be getting to that point, right? Yeah. What is that like? Talk us through it.
Getting to the point, high level 2020, we had to cut costs.
Okay.
Because of the pandemic. We were supposed to grow a lot with our Dang Bar had done really well the year, right? We were supposed to grow. We cut costs. Late 2020 to early 2021, we got to break even, which was like awesome. We're like, oh my God, it's amazing. It was like,
Yes.
we got to break even. And we were doing about 10 million, 12 million in sales. We got to break even. We were like celebrating. It's awesome. Then so the nail in the coffin was the supply chain. 2021, 60, like 2/3 of our supply chain were from Thailand. And freight rates, it's like you're nodding your head. Sounds like this resonates with you and probably like your portfolio companies. 2/3 of the product came from Thailand. So the freight rates went from like $5,000 to like $20,000 per container. So that was the nail in the coffin. And then we got the board on board, and then we continued to try to sell the company during this time, and that we weren't successful. And then we wound down. Then we decided the board recommended that we start looking into options to wind this thing down. And as I started talking to counsel, I just started getting really interested in this process. I thought it was fascinating. And in retrospect, and having wound it down now, I'm like, what I really appreciated about this industry is like it's the intersection of accounting, legal, and psychology. Like what's interesting about this is that the creditors and the investors, a lot of times on the downsides, like they don't know what's going on. Like you as a founder is like, oh, like no, everything's going to be good. Like this is what's going to happen. We had a little bit of bad news, but this, and this. What I loved about this is like, this is the bad news, and that is it. I am
Right.
sorry.
Yes.
And everything I talked to you about, I had spent 4 years, Kate, being like, and this is how we're going to fix it, and not really believing it. And now, 4 years later, I could say, actually, unfortunately, there's not an easy fix.
Right.
And if you're a creditor, we might owe you some money. Here's our plan. We are so sorry. And if you're an investor, I'm sorry this investment didn't work out for you. I'll keep you up to date, but like your investment meant the world, and this is all the things that happened. If you're an employee, it's like, hey, like, I'm sorry this happened. We were running out of money, but we can give you this modest severance that we were able to give. And like, and I loved doing this. Like, I loved giving people closure, and I was good at it. And I thought about it more. I was like, I think the industry needs this. Like, I don't think people are going in to do this.
Right.
And anyways, that's where that happened to the company, and I had to do what was best at that time for the creditors and communicate everywhere. And I like found a small passion for doing this in the process.
I'm sure it was a relief in a sense, right? To start speaking. I don't want to say the truth. It wasn't like you weren't saying the truth before, but right. Something that you had a little more conviction around, right?
There's something, it's like, I've talked about this with somebody else, and they put an analogy to it once. They're like, oh, it kind of reminds me of that times like you put in your notice at work, and then you could say whatever you want to anybody.
Right.
It felt a little bit like that.
Yeah.
In a much more professional way.
Right.
But there was something that was extremely freeing about it.
Yes.
And then there's also, I think as a founder, I mean, I said I wasn't a founder, but in some ways I was. Emotionally, I was a founder. By title,
of course.
Emotionally, yes. I was a founder in certain ways. And there's this value in, I saw this value. There's this value in, sorry, how do I say this? With the 4 years I put in that I told you about from 2018 to 2022, where we were struggling. I almost felt like I was jailed because I couldn't leave. And as a founder, if you're struggling, you can't just leave, or you could just leave, but that's kind of messed up. It's like, why would you, society looks at that as like, why would you just you're just leaving everyone behind there?
Right.
And so there's this internal pressure to stay. I loved the idea of being a free agent. And I think it's maybe because I have a lot of confidence in my abilities. Like I've learned all these things and I'm going to be fine. And financially, I have money in the bank, so I'm okay. Right. And I'm at a privileged position to say this. Not everyone can say this. Like if I didn't have any money in the bank, if I had a family to care for, can't just be like, oh, I'm happy to be a free agent. No, I'd probably I'd be like, Andrew, go screw yourself. Like, right. I'm in a very privileged situation. But I love the idea of being a free agent because I could dream about what was next.
Right. So let's talk about that, because you said doing this work, you felt kind of a passion in a sense because you were good at it. But I also think you really get it, right? Because you were in this co-founder type position. You do this work. Tell us about your current role and how, your Dang experience led to this role and what you're doing.
Yeah. So I talked to a guy named, what I was grateful for is that it was a very slow wind down with Dang because we had bought a whole bunch of inventory because of the crazy supply chain. So to be sure we bought. So I had about a 9-month lead time doing part-time work for Dang while I was finding my new thing. So I had time to explore. Okay. And then you hear about those founders that exit and they take a year off. I felt like I did maybe a half a year off. Okay. One of those, but I was like, that is so important. If you're exiting, if it's a lot of money, it's a little money, you just take some time off. It's so important. So I did some research into this field, and I saw that one of the firms that did these wind downs or these things called these assignments of benefit to the creditors was Sherwood Partners. They've been doing
Okay.
this for a while. I talked to this, I met this very charming 77-year-old man, Marty Pinchinson, who's one of the presidents of the company. And I met him at it's called the Turnaround Management Association in Boston. And I approached him and I quoted him from one of his podcasts that he was on. And then he didn't stop talking to me for 45 minutes. And like, I swear to God, like he was just like, he was telling me this, and I swear I probably got like 30 words in the whole time. Like he was just talking the rest of the time. He was just like, he was like imparting his life, like his 77 years of life knowledge to me, because I think he was so happy that I was talking to him and that I had listened
Right.
to his podcast. And then so at the end of the 45 minutes, he's like, "So what are you doing here?" I was like, "Oh, I might be looking for a job." And he's like, you should join us."
Ah, I love it. What a
And so
connection.
then I interviewed with his colleagues, and then I found the people there to be very sharp. And I was like, if I'm going to learn and grow the most in learning about this space, like this is the place to do it. And that's why I did. So that's how I joined Sherwood Partners. So we do insolvencies, we do turnarounds. The probably biggest bread and butter is ABCs, but it really depends on the situation. But an
Okay.
ABC is an assignment for the benefit of creditors. It's effectively an alternative bankruptcy. It's like
Oh,
a chapter. It's effective, like it's a cheaper and a less public bankruptcy, and we're the trustees, we make the process. It's very smooth. We ensure a smooth landing. Like that's what we do in these situations.
interesting.
We also do some turnaround work, but that's the main thing that we do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So when do you normally come into the process? If I'm a founder listening and I've been feeling like you were feeling at Dang Foods, right? Like the writing's starting to come on the wall, right? Like their signs are there. Where do I go? What do I do?
Great question. And like regardless of whether or not like you call me or not, I really wanted to impart this wisdom
Yes.
onto others. Like so I've wound out about 10 companies this year. There's a countless others that I've talked to that couldn't afford us or couldn't afford to hire even the right counsel because they were too late. And then those, I don't know how they ended up, but they were not soft landings. And I'm sure that was much rockier emotionally, psychologically, for a risk standpoint, for the management teams, for their investors. I think, listen, even if you have 12 months of runway left, I think it'll be good for your management team just to spend a few hours just thinking about Plan D, just a little bit. You don't need to do it that much. Just a little bit thinking about Plan D. Talk with your management team, talk with your board. Maybe someone on your board has some expertise on what that looks like or just has been there before. Talk to your counsel about that. You have a good relationship with counsel. They could refer you to a bankruptcy lawyer to like, or talk to me. The idea is that I think it's important for founders and management teams to envision and plan out Plan D just a little bit. And to see that it's actually not that bad.
Okay.
And then I think why that helps is because then you'll take the right amount of risk and you won't be afraid. And like you're reducing the fear in the decisions that you
Oh,
make. And
interesting.
I think it's really healthy for companies to do that earlier, right? Now, when you get to 6 months or less, I think you have to start to hone in that plan just a little bit more. That's what I
Okay.
recommend. And then usually I've worked with my brother. I worked with a lot of founders. And the reason why they are founders and the reason why they've been so successful and especially the most successful ones, is that they have a distorted view of reality.
Absolutely. All the founders I've worked
You
for.
know what
Yeah,
I'm saying.
absolutely. Yes.
Respectfully, they
Yes.
have like Elon Musk is probably the biggest example, right? I
Yes.
think a distorted view of reality, and
Mm-hmm.
that's works so well when you're trying to disrupt something and create something and raising money to change the world, right? When it
Mm-hmm.
comes to winding down a business, you absolutely do not want a distorted review of this. You want to know
Yeah.
exactly how much cash you have left. You know exactly who to pay out. Like you want the exact opposite of that, right?
Yes.
Which is, I was always the opposite to my brother. So I always kind of had these skills, and not until like I came into this, I'm like, oh, this is like where I'm optimizing all of my skills. So if you have 6 months left, you definitely want to hone that on that in a little bit more. But I'm thinking at the 12-month mark, just like have a conversation about it. You can even tell the board, like in a worst case scenario, this will happen, and we'll either go with Sherwood or we'll go with, like, we have our bankruptcy lawyer, and like this is how we're going to wind it down, and we're going to be okay anyways, right?
That's got to feel good, like you said, to have that conversation and think that planning. I bet a lot of founders listening are thinking, no, I don't ever want to go there. But it must feel good to go there in a bit, right? Like you have some control.
Yeah, there's something. I mean, I go to therapy, and I've done it for a while. And there was an exercise that my therapist took me through when I was scared of something before, like when like fear really got me, and she would be like, "Oh, like what's behind that?" And like what's behind that? And like what's behind that? And you kept on peeling back these questions, and ultimately it came down to like a fear of death. Like, oh, if this happens, like, then my wife will leave me, or like my
Right.
brothers, and then like if that happens, my brother abandoned me, and after that, like I won't have any friends, and after that, like maybe I won't eat because I won't want, and then it's like because of death. And the actual psychological exercise of going through that, like, completely eliminated that fear. And I think it's
Got
the
it.
same, and I think it's the same thing.
Yes.
I think it's the same thing for
Yeah.
businesses. Like, go through that exercise of what that looks like. Hey, that's not actually that bad. And like, if that happens, like, we could call up Andrew, or we could call up for counsel, we could call this person, and like we have that person. And then, so psychologically, I think it's really healthy to do earlier. The other also tactical reason too is to have a smooth landing. It does cost a little bit of money. I'm not trying to push people in our direction. I don't want people to fail. Like, I'm not rooting for anybody to fail. We have enough work as it is, but it does cost a little bit of money. And so you need a little bit of cushion. Also, like, a lot of founders, when they say they have 6 months, they might only have 5 or 4 months, because there's these fiduciary reserves, like payroll, like final 401k payouts, like things that you really need to pay out, or else the board is liable.
So go over those milestones one more time. You said 12 months and those two. I think that I want to,
Yeah, just high level, like 12 months, I think is a good time to just, and a lot of startups are probably in that situation. So it's probably most, like 90% of the startups that apply this. Listen, just like, call up your counsel, like talk to your management team, talk to your board, see if you know anybody. Call me up if you need to. I'm happy to have quick calls. And just like explore what that looks like, get some numbers, like see what that process is like. Literally just like 3 hours, tell your board about it. Like, hey, this is what would happen in 12 months in a worst case scenario. Just FYI. And like, your management team should know. And I think it'll be really good for you and your team emotionally just to know that. And strategically, emotionally and strategically.
And bringing it. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
So go ahead. I want to hear
I was just going to say, I think bringing it back to your experience at Dang, don't you think if you had done that during that period you described, how much better you would have felt?
Totally. And by the way, most of your employees know that 12 months are left or 6 months are left, and they're probably thinking about their alternatives anyways.
Absolutely.
So if you think you're not having the conversation with them about what plan D is, you're saving them, you're not. If anything, if my boss was telling me, hey, like, just in a plan D, in a worst case, like this happens, I'm like, I love that you're thinking about that. I love that you thought through plan A through D, and you're telling me about it.
Yes, absolutely. We're coming up on time. This has been so fascinating. I really appreciate you being so candid and sharing what you felt and what you went through with Dang, because I don't think we talk enough about that on this show. We talk about like persevere, keep trying, get through
you're
the
like,
lows.
persevere, keep trying. I'm like, no, give up. Give up if you feel like you should give up. Give up, but like that doesn't mean that give up, but like your entity might have failed, but that doesn't mean you are a failure.
Right. And I like the really tactical, helpful advice around wind downs and how it would have helped you at Dang and how it can help founders today. Anything else you want to leave us with before we get into where listeners can find you?
No, I mean, if you're a founder out there and you're struggling, like, I've been there and I get it. And I hear you, and I'm doing this because I want there to be more resources for founders in hard times. And if it's not me, I'm hoping that you can find somebody else that you're close to or a support group that can help you through these times.
I really appreciate that, Andrew, because one of the things that's been coming up a lot lately in my conversations with people is just how hard it is to be a founder
Yeah.
or, one of those first founding members of a startup. And so many people are now talking about mental health and just well-being, founder well-being. So I appreciate you saying that to everyone listening. Where can they find you? Like if they want to learn more about Sherwood Partners and you and your services, where do you go?
Yeah, you could find us at our website for Sherwood. You could Google Sherwood Partners, SHERWOOD Partners. I have my email address. Unfortunately, my last name is really long.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
Kitirattragarn at SherwoodPartners.com, Kitirattragarn, SherwoodPartners.com. So you could find me by emailing me or going to the website.
Thank you. Thank you for being here today and
Yep.
sharing your story. We appreciate it. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you so much, Kate. Appreciate it.
You've been listening to Startup Success. To make sure you don't miss out on future episodes, subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast player. Like what you hear? Tap the number of stars you think the show deserves in Apple Podcasts. For more tools and resources for your own startup success, check out birkelandassociates.com. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.